How do you measure a good life? For most of us, there's probably several factors we think about. One would be personal satisfaction and fulfillment. Am I happy with my job, my career, my relationships, my health? That's important. Or maybe we think about the influence we have or the impact we have on other people. Am I really helping people? Or am I really making the world a better place? Or maybe it's nothing really that big. Maybe it's more just like contentment and being comfortable in life. I have a place to live. I have a good job. I have a family, perhaps children or grandchildren. And I don't necessarily have the best and the biggest of everything, but I'm satisfied with my life. Well, what if I told you that as important and meaningful as those things are, they are not at all the measurement of a good life? Let me tell you about two great men in the Bible who live very different lives with very different outcomes. The first is King Solomon, who had more than you and I can probably even imagine ever having. Money, success, wisdom, power. And yet in the book of Ecclesiastes, he says, I'm unhappy with it all. In fact, it's vanity. And then he comes to this simple conclusion. The conclusion, when everything has been heard, is fear God and keep his commandments, because this applies to every person. And on the other hand, we have the Apostle Paul, who lived with just a fraction of what Solomon had, and probably a fraction of what you and I have today. He sometimes was filled, but sometimes he went hungry. Sometimes he was comfortable, but the majority of his life as a Christian, he lived with suffering, rejection, loneliness, and he even died for his faith. And yet he says in Philippians 4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say rejoice. And then in verse 13, I can do all things through him who strengthens me. So, what's the difference between these two great men? Well, one of them was living for himself, and the other was living for someone greater than himself. And yet, despite their differences, they have one thing in common. Both of these great men say that the best life is the one that is lived for God, because that's the measurement of a truly good life.